Hello, welcome inside a weekly wrap edition of the Scores Table. Brian Hench and Danny Riego here with you. Really busy week this week, Danny boy. Holy smokes, we have a ton to get to. We're going to be joined by Arsenal Tech coach Michael Fox here later in the show. But first, Danny, let's just dive into a couple of the biggest games of the week. I think first we got to start with the Marion County Championship game. Franklin Central, Lawrence Central. I'll start the conversation with this. Speaking of Lawrence Central, the response at 29-9 run in the fourth quarter was not unexpected. You knew they were going to go on a run. It was just how big was it going to get? Would they be able to finish it out? What was going to happen? And it did. And it, in true Lawrence Central fashion, it happened like that. And it was a lot of the defense dialing up the pressure, them hitting some big shots, different players stepping up in different moments with Abdurkeep kind of sparking the whole thing. That was to be expected. I was most fascinated going into that game to see how Franklin Central matched up. And it was interesting. I kind of got the sense talking to Vince Sorbonne, their coach, afterwards, and Lily Graves and Ashley, their other player, Ashley
Baker.
There it is. Yeah, thank you, Danny, for saving me as I tried to find that. Talking to them after the game, that it was confidence. You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like they were going to wilt. And when they got out, they had a lead after first quarter, then a lead after the second quarter, and then they kept building it. And they were matching them punch for punch in the third. I mean, the lead got out to 8, I think, when LC got it down to 5. Lily Graves comes down, hits a 3 on the other end to push it out to 8. That was big, and they were matching him punch for punch, and then LC just did its thing. But Franklin Central, the thing, I guess my point with all that is that they've faced teams similar to LC before. They've seen players like the Lampleys and Abdurkeep and Kenzie and all those other kids before. So they weren't afraid of the moment, I guess, and that really shined through. I mean, I look at them, they're young, but they're not inexperienced. They have a lot of sophomores, but they all played as freshmen. And it feels like they're getting really close to breaking through for one of those wins. And last night felt like a statement. Yeah, they lost. Yeah, it wasn't that close. There were some cosmetic three-pointers late, but Franklin Central played really well, man. And that was impressive, the way that they were able to control the game against LC, which, to be fair, maybe was a little tired, but still, I mean, that was an impressive performance, I thought.
What did you say their run was in the fourth quarter?
29-9 was what they said on the broadcast.
29-9. I mean, that was actually Lawrence Central's second run of the game. I think they had one early in the first quarter, which made it, I think it was like an 8-point game. Most teams throughout watching Lawrence Central the last couple of years, we are accustomed to people folding at different times. The character piece, the character of Franklin Central showed out because they required Lawrence Central to make a second run. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Lily Graves 3, which made it an 8-point game. I mean, that was a big 3. And it wasn't like early in the second quarter. That was a late third quarter, late second half 3, which made it an 8-point game, forced a Lawrence Central timeout. But I just have to go back and credit. I mean, I've got notes on Franklin Central. We'll talk about it, but I have to go back and credit LC in this. There's a lot of people in the area that say that it's harder to win the Marion County tournament than it is their own sectional. And that's relatively obvious with the amount of schools and talent that are there. But let's just establish first, Hank, that they had to go through Pike, Lawrence North, Warren Central before they even get to the Franklin Central game, which was their second game of the day. Now, yes, Franklin Central had to do the exact same thing on the other side, but Lawrence Central is going to take everybody's best punch. And quite frankly, Franklin Central there's no other team probably that's like that in the state that's going to take everybody's, dedicated effort like that. But the fact that they even made the second run, you then need to break down how that second run happens. And in just I don't know, I don't want to call it boring in a negative way, but in the most boring way, it's just everybody. Like Jayla Lampley, for example, doesn't score in the third quarter and then goes on a 5-0 run by herself in the middle of that 29-9 run. Lola Lampley's getting offensive rebounds. You mentioned the Abdurkeep 3. That gym on stream didn't seem to get louder than when it did when Abdurkeep hit the left corner 3, which put them up to stay in that basketball game. Kenter Garrett was making plays on the defensive side. I mean, the announcers they love Kenter Garrett. And then Mackenzie, like Anaya Mackenzie in every one of these basketball games is just making some play, like some offensive rebound or some steal. Yeah. I mean, and it's all 5 of them. It's not one person. It's like, oh, so-and-so hit 4 threes or 3 threes. It's all of them making plays at different times.
Yeah, and then they have some freshmen too that are stepping up. They have some younger kids, and that'll be something we talk about here after the interview. I have an audio clip to play from that, but they have some younger kids too that are coming along, and just kind of that concept of building a program now that they've had the success that they've had is just really impressive. And then on the Franklin Central side too, I know you wanted to talk about her, but I mean Payton DuVall was phenomenal. Like she stood out to me when I watched them play Brownsburg with the job that she did against Avery Gordon, and it felt like maybe she got worn down a little bit, understandably so, late in the game. But I mean, she stood out there against Warren Central or Ben Davis during the first game, and I mean, she was a beast during the second game against Lawrence Central too. I mean, that kid's part of a really special class there that they have of sophomores at FC.
She runs the floor really well. She catches the ball. She finishes. She's high IQ. I mean, that she plays a lot of the middle. To take Lawrence Central's to make it Lawrence Central specific here, you have to be able to throw over their zone, but in able to do that, sometimes it has to go through the middle. I mean, they cut about a half rotation off because they're so long and so fast, Lawrence Central, that DuVall in the middle has to move. She can't just be stationary in the middle of the floor, and she does. I mean, if you watch her in that game, she does a really good job. Sometimes it leads to a layup. Sometimes it leads to just occupancy of the area where kids like Huotari or Baker could throw kind of those one-handed skip passes to McVeigh, things like that. But yeah, DuVall is really shaping up to be one of the best. Well, she's not shaping up. She's always been one of the better players in that class. And let me say this. She's shaping up to be, in that, from an athleticism perspective in 27, like Graves, DuVall, Koch, like she top of class kind of categories. She's tough. And I think there was a lot of conversation as to who would emerge in that 27 class. And through one season, you can't really draw a lot of conclusion. Now that we're halfway done with the second season of these 27s, we can start to make some snap judgments, some opinions. My opinion of Payton DuVall is that she's one of the 2 or 3 best players in that class. She's really, really, really good.
Really good. We should also shout out Lily Graves, who cleared 1,000 career points against Ben Davis. She said that she wasn't necessarily following it, but it sounds like basically everybody else in her life was, from her parents. Her dad was at the game. Her coaches were. Everybody else was following it, and I think it kind of caught her by surprise when she pulled it off by Ben Davis, who I know we didn't mention before the show, Danny, but that'll be another team that we want to circle back and talk about too, because they had a crazy game against Roncalli to come back and win by the young Ben Davis team.
Yeah, that was 40-38. That was a close game.
Yeah, they were down by a lot too, but we'll talk about them a little bit later. Any other thoughts from you on the Marion County Championship game?
Yeah, you started down a path of Franklin Central, and I don't know if it's maybe that they lost some games early. I don't know. They've kind of flown under the radar, but when you watch them play against Lawrence Central, they have all of the pieces. They just got Ashley Baker back, who's one of the better scorers in that class. We mentioned that 27 class. Okay. So there's DuVall, but there's also Ashley Baker, who, like I said, is one of the better scorers. She missed some time due to an injury, and I think that was only her 3rd or 4th game back.
Yep.
But I think she's come back and started shooting 50% from 3. But I'll center it around Riley Huotari. I got to familiarize myself with her game a little bit over the summer. Truth be told, I didn't know a ton about her. I just knew her name. And then was sitting on the end of the bench one time for like some summer game, and her game just jumped out. She has a floor general kind of skill set. I don't know the inner workings of Franklin Central and Coach Sorbonne, and I don't know if she is the floor general. I just mean that her skill set is one that she can control tempo. She distributes the basketball seemingly where it needs to be. I think a lot of the effectiveness they had against that trap was because she was so calm. But I think I looked it up yesterday when I was watching it, and I think she's averaging close to 7 assists a game and only a couple of turnovers. Like, those are big time numbers. So when you have a floor general like that, with pieces like Baker, pieces like McVeigh, pieces like, of course, DuVall, that's a really good basketball team that I'm not sure that I would want to face in sectional time, particularly with Baker getting healthy. But Riley Huotari I always say this, I always preface it regardless of class, but she's one of the best point guards in Indianapolis, like without question. If you haven't seen her play, watch her play. Franklin Central is in they're in control when she has the ball. I'll close with this and then hear your thoughts on Huotari. Muffet McGraw, former coach at Notre Dame, she used to tell me, if you want to play point guard for me being Coach McGraw, she would say, when my point guard has the ball, I need to know that the weight of the world is off my shoulders. I need to know that the sun is going to come up. I need to know that everything is going to be okay. When I watch Huotari play, I kind of get those vibes. Like she is in such control. So I don't know that her statistics outside of her assist to turnover ratio would jump out at you, but she's a critical piece to that team, Hank.
6-2 assist to turnover ratio per game.
Okay.
That's pretty good. That's solid.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's really good.
And they, like yesterday is a good example of that, where they were able to control tempo, and that's a big part of her. And then Baker too, like you mentioned, it's a huge return for them. She was out for the first 8 games of the season with an ankle sprain that's pretty significant, but she's getting back in the groove of things. And her jump from last Friday against Brownsburg to Saturday against Ben Davis was pretty noticeable, where you could tell she's just getting more comfortable in the flow of things. So like I mentioned earlier, it feels like Franklin Central's kind of inching closer and closer to that big breakout win that they just kind of launch off and go. You can feel it coming. Like it's close. They're very close.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Moving down south here, I was at Borden versus Lanesville on Thursday. I know I've been hyping it up for a while. I've had it hyped up for me a lot over the past 3 years, and let me tell you, it was amazing. We showed up. So we show up about 90 minutes before varsity tip, and the parking lot is already filling in. And it's just like, what is happening? And you go inside, and the gym's already filling in for the JV game. And it's not just like passive watchers; like they're cheering. And it was a pretty bad JV game, to be blunt. I mean, it was like, I think I texted you, Dan. It was like 1-2-0, and I was like, this isn't fun. But God love the fans. They were
hang on, time out. 1 or 2? Which one was it?
I can't remember. It was the first quarter of the varsity game wasn't the best either. Both teams admitted to that, but so it's all kind of running together on me. But I mean, the atmosphere made it, like this isn't. I mean, it's bad, but it's not so bad. Just because like the students were kind of yelling and cheering on their team, which was great. I mean, student sections at any girls basketball game is amazing. Let alone when they actually, seem to be kind of invested in the JV game. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the varsity game, like I said, the hype leading into it was phenomenal. They dropped the lights, Danny. They put on the purple spotlight for Waynesville to come out for warm-ups. Borden got the expectedly cold reception from the Lanesville student section. Borden student section returned the favor from behind their team's bench. Kind of a slow-paced game, but I tell you what, man, that Lanesville defense is so good. And Borden, with Ava Wheeler and Riley Rarick, who I'm going to write about this week, I mean, just the length and the problems that they present is just tremendous. Like, they're so good individually, but they work so well in tandem. Like there are a lot of plays where Wheeler's working on Shelby Allen, Lanesville's post on the inside, and she's able to kind of push her up to the top. So Lanesville tries to force a pass into that high post, and Rarick's there ready to spin and picks off the pass and goes. They did the same thing to Hadley Crozier a few times, and I think Hilton Brumley, they got her a couple times too. But just watching those two work together, and then I mean, Rarick had kind of an off night offensively, but I've seen the numbers. I know she can produce. And then Wheeler, she finished with, I think, 13 points, 14 points. She was their main source of offense. But just, I mean, so long, really good at getting the basket. She was popping threes during warm-ups. Really talented team there. And that Borden North Central Farmersburg showdown, if and when we get it, will be tremendous entertainment, tremendous theater. But can't speak enough about the environment, the atmosphere, everything that went into it. It was awesome, and I loved it. And you should go to IndyStar.com and check out Grace Smith's photos. And if you want, stick around and read my column because it was really fun. And I was glad that I was there for it. Now we get to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the way that it finished. And oh my God, Danny, I've never seen anything quite like this. I'm just going to read what I wrote because I think that it's the best way that I can summarize it. It's coming down late. All right. Crozier comes up. She hits a 3-pointer from the top of the arc with less than a minute remaining. That should have made it a 2-point game. The referees, you watch the video, both of them had their hands up signaling for a 3-pointer, but it was only credited as a 2-pointer on the scoreboard. So it's 30-27 when Borden turns it over in the final seconds, giving Lanesville one last shot. Lanesville comes down. Libby Sayre hits it long 2 with about 8 seconds remaining. Now, on the scoreboard, it's counted as a 3-pointer, which is incorrect. Borden gets the ball back and is able to bleed off the final second. So there's confusion everywhere. Crozier was trying to foul. Brumley was trying to foul. Allen's like, what are you guys doing? We're tied. We want to go to overtime. Don't send them to the line. Referees go over to the scores table and they make a correction to change the last 3-pointer to a 2-pointer, not realizing that they never counted the extra point. So the scoreboard reads 30-29, but the book reads 30-30. So what do you do? And that's still to be determined. There are discussions I've heard of making the teams go back to play out the final 4 minutes, like just play a final 4-minute overtime to decide a winner. That seems wildly unfair and kind of pointless, if I'm being honest. I don't know how a tie would look in the record books. And I mean, I just feel awful for Borden because they've tried so hard and for so long to beat them. And I feel equally bad for Lanesville because it's not one of those situations where it's like, oh, well, if you didn't miss the 6 free throws, which were a factor, you win that game and it doesn't matter. Well, they didn't hit those free throws, but they hit enough shots at the end. They scored the 5 points to tie it, and it just didn't get counted. And the most befuddling thing of the whole thing is that nobody, game officials-wise, stopped at the scores table and said, hey, is the score right? Like, there was no double checking the books. It was just kind of like, okay, it's over and gone. Just a really messy and weird situation where it should have been 30-30. It ended up being 30-29, a Borden win. I would argue Borden played a better game, I think, overall. You know, Lanesville was really good defensively. Felt like Borden, though, scoring-wise, was hitting more of the shots and doing more of the right things or the better things or whatever you want to say. But geez Louise, man. Whew.
That's a remarkable story.
Have you ever heard anything like that?
Well, I laugh because that the scoreboard and book discrepancies happen on the reg in the summer, but they don't happen when number 1 and number 2 in the classes are playing in a big time game. I mean, I don't know. The most interesting part of that story to me was situationally what you do when you're down 1 and tied. In the most obvious, commentary from me is completely different. Yeah. And you cited that Crozier was doing one thing and Allen was doing another thing. What Borden does in that spot is also very different. I mean, if you catch the basketball and you're down up 1. No, it actually isn't drastically different. Okay, but I'm even confused even listening to the story, I guess is my point. I can't imagine that either team feels great about the end of that game. Now, first from a Borden perspective, if they decide that you have to go back and play that overtime, I mean, isn't Borden just going to say no? Like, it was at your place, Lanesville, or your officials, your athletic director, your coach. I mean, is that your play? I mean, why do we have the W, we won? Why do we have to go back? I think that's the most obvious thing. And then from a Lanesville perspective, I don't even know where to go with that. Like, I don't even know where to go with that. There's two. It sounded like you said that there were 2 discrepancies. Like, there was one when it was 30-27, then another one when it was 30-29, and so made it 30-30.
Yeah, so I'll do a better job explaining it. So Lanesville hits a 3-pointer that should have made it a 2-point game, but it was only scored as a 2, making the score 30-27. Lanesville gets the ball back, and Libby Sayre hits a long 2-pointer with about 8 seconds remaining, and the scoreboard changes to 30-30. So my reaction on the floor was, oh, they must have thought it was a 3-pointer, even though it was very clearly a 2. And I'm also kind of thinking, why is she shooting a 2-pointer when they're down 3? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Well, then, so they change the scoreboard to 30-30. So the officials they notice that, obviously. So they go over, talk to the scores table, and as the teams are gathering or teams are just kind of returning to their bench because nobody knows what's going on, you see the scoreboard change to 30-29 without any explanation. And then I guess the referees just saw that, not realizing that Crozier's 3 was counted as a 2, and send everybody home. And it was just chaos from there. I tell you, chaos.
Did you interview what's everyone else's perspective? I mean, we've heard your rendition of the story. I wasn't there, so I can't give an alternate view.
I've spoken on background and off record with people, and nobody is happy.
Fair enough.
I was texting with Lanesville's coach yesterday, Angie Hinton, we were texting about it a little bit. I'll just generalize it and say, understandably not happy. I'm not overstepping or breaking any marriages there. Understandably frustrated. We're going to talk about it hopefully soon because I got to talk with her a couple other stories. Emailed as well with Matt Vick as early as this morning, just seeing if he'd want to talk for a story on it. He's going to wait until everything's decided. And that's the other thing, too, that I should mention is that nothing's been decided. I think on Max Preps, it's listed as a tie. And by the law of the land, if it's in the scorebook, that's what's final, the official scorers book. And in the official scorers book, Hadley Crozier has 11 points and it's 30-30, hence all the drama. So he's in a wait and see pattern, but also obviously frustrated, I think is a fair thing to say as everybody is. I mean, gosh, I'm a neutral observer and I'm frustrated because it's not fair to the kids. It's a pain in my butt, but I guess it's good podcast content. So I can't be too mad about it, but
I went through a search to try to find the game on stream. I just wanted to see the last couple of minutes. I couldn't find it. It has to be somewhere. I'll come up with it at some point in time to watch it.
I'll send you the clips. I have like 5 different people sent me the clips too. My mentions and DMs have been buzzing. So I'll get
Have they? I can't. I don't even know what to say.
What's the solution? Like you can't. Can you call it a tie? Like that's still like that's. I feel so bad for Borden. I'm not playing favorites here, but it's just like they celebrate, and then it's like they got the candy, but then they're taking it back from them, and they hadn't beaten them since 2016. But then calling it, doing anything else like giving Borden the win isn't fair to Lanesville because it wasn't. You know what I mean? What do you do?
I don't know. You're referencing things that, in my opinion, like you're referencing things that need to be caught in the moment. I just don't know. I mean, where do you draw the line then to retrospectively go back and make adjustments within a basketball game? Okay. Yeah. Look, the scoreboard is as black and white and linear as you can get. If you make a basket, then points go up or so on and so forth. Okay. And that's correctable. Okay. It is. But retrospectively, I don't know. Retrospectively, they just did this in other leagues, whether it's the NBA or WNBA or college basketball. They'll just like flag something and then they'll go back and look at it. And then they make the announcement when you come out of commercial break, like Tyrese Halliburton shot is now ruled a 3. And this is the new score and everybody cheers and it's done. Okay. But what the NBA isn't doing is coming back a day later and being like, hey, by the way, okay, that shot that was, that Halliburton shot is actually a 2. So now we're going to call it a tie, but the Bulls want to play it out. So now they're going to come back down from, to me, it's done. Mm-hmm. And that stinks for Lanesville. It does, but I guess my official position, being put on the spot, having heard the story for the first time 30 seconds ago, when all of you heard the story for the first time, is tough break.
Yeah. That's the thing is, though, I would generally agree. And I'll bring up Michael Fox here to join the discussion because I'm interested to hear another coach's perspective on this, a neutral party. But the hang up here is that the book of record has it in as 30-30.
Oh, so the book has 30-30, but the scoreboard had 30-29.
Yeah. So that was my confusion the night of, and why the column reads as it does. It reads as a Borden win. The focus of the column is on the atmosphere and everything, but you have to address it, and I did. But we leave there, and I was texting with Kyle Denrip, who's been doing this in Indiana a lot longer than me, and we were talking about it in the rules, and I was talking to people there breaking down the rules, and there isn't really any recourse. But officially from the IHSAA is that they're aware of the situation. They've heard from both schools, I think. But either way, they sent them a list of things. Here's what you can do, and the schools are sorting through it. So it's a hairy thing. I'm gonna bring in Michael Fox, Tech girls basketball coach. Michael, you've been listening to what happened. What do you make of a situation like this where the scoreboard says one thing, the scorebook says another, and everybody went home confused?
You're on mute, Mike.
You're on mute, buddy. I got you.
Yeah, for sure. I've never heard anything like it. Like I said, they're both in the same class, right? I take it.
Oh, 1A and 2A.
Yeah, Lanesville, okay. Success factor for Lanesville.
So I was going to say, man, hopefully, they'll play down the road, but obviously they're not going to play again. But, I think that's when we come down to having somebody consistent on your book, like the book person for sure should have said something, but then also the refs got to be more consistent when they calling, that tight game,
That's just, it's wild, man. Like
that is crazy.
I've seen some terrible calls like end of games, like buzzer beater that shouldn't count. It stands out, still haunts my dreams. But this was just an entirely different animal. I mean, thank God that it wasn't an elimination game. I mean, it has conference implications, but neither team's season is over because of this call, thankfully. But oh man, if anybody wants to borrow my job for the rest of the week just to deal with the fallout, you can have it. I should have offered it up the night of. Oh man. But Michael, how you doing, buddy? It's great to see you.
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So many things that we want to talk with you about. Let's just start with your team though, and your group. I know that it's a bit of a rebuilding year for you guys. You graduated and lost a lot of pieces from last year. But how have things been going? How have you been going about trying to just build up this group that you have this year in 24-25?
Total rebuild from this, from last year, losing about 95% of our scoring from last year. Got 6 seniors. To be honest, a lot of the seniors that we have haven't really been consistent in investing into being a student athlete off the court, but I think now they're kind of developing together as a team. Like I said, I think they come every day. I think we're winning off the court more than anything. We're building some character traits that these girls can take with them in their journey outside of basketball. I think they bought into what our program is doing, but I think I got some young pieces that for sure have been thrown to the fire early playing 4A basketball, and I think that they kind of bought into. They know what it's going to take to be able to have to be competitive at the 4A level.
You talked about the off the court stuff and kind of getting kids to just, buy into everything and invest in everything. As a coach, and you've been at this at a while at Tech and in IPS, how do you do that? Like, how do you get girls to understand it's not just basketball and getting them to think, just beyond even just high school, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, Kayla Lacombe, for sure. She's one of the standout kind of kids that I talk about a lot to kids that are interested in our program or coming up in IPS. It is possible to be successful coming through IPS. She was a 4.0 student. She went on to play college basketball. She's playing at Kankakee Community College. But more than anything, what I think a lot of people don't realize is that she invested a lot of time during the summertime. She invested, she just worked. She was a gym rat. It was days where she called me, we wouldn't have workouts and she wanted to get in the gym, where I don't think we see that a lot. I know for sure in IPS that I haven't seen it. Hopefully we starting to develop some kids at an earlier level through kind of our feeder system. That's been one of my big things that I've tried to implement since being here at Arsenal Tech, is trying to get kids started earlier, trying to get it ingrained in their head that it is possible to be successful through IPS, because I think, we play in an extremely hard sectional, but also, our schedule is tough. So if you want to play at the next level, it is possible.
Oh, sorry, Danny. I thought you were jumping in. How have you, over the past couple of years, I remember when we talked for the first time, Kayla's junior, so it would have been a couple of years ago, just how you were trying to instill that Tech pride and kind of, rejuvenate the program. How did you see that going over the past couple of years and just, sustaining it?
For sure. I think it was a culture shock for a lot of the kids that are still in the program, because I don't think it was important to some of them. I think sometimes we focus as coaches, we focus so much on basketball that we forget about, teaching the kids the day-to-day type stuff. Some of these kids look up to us as role models. And I think the way that I carry myself, as well as the people on my staff carry themselves, Consistency is something that we're very strong on, but also holding each other accountable, whether it's a coaching staff as well as the players. So I think that has been kind of a staple of our program. And now when I try to, tell kids about our program, I know that that's something that I tell them, where you will have an opportunity to play early, but there's certain things that you have to do to, make sure that is possible.
You started you're a Warren Central grad, correct?
I am.
Warren Central grad, then you've coached at Cristo Rey, Shortridge, and now Tech. What is it about IPS and just getting to coach in the Indianapolis city proper that drew you to those jobs?
I like building stuff from scratch. Truthfully, I like to do things that people don't think is possible. And I think sometimes I've had the opportunity to go and coach at programs that have been established already. But more than anything, I kind of want to, go in and kind of create a different culture, a different generation of basketball that a lot of people haven't seen. And I've had the opportunity to play for my head coach, Scott Hetty. He instilled a lot of things in me that I know for sure that I push to that student athletes that I work with right now.
Michael, I also played for Scott too, except when he was an assistant for his dad, Bob. I don't know if you ever made that connection.
Bob was an assistant for 1 year when I was at Warren. So like I said, some of those things that they instilled in me, man, it's still every day. I mean, I use it. Attitude, commitment, pride is something that sure, I tell my kids that those things, they're instilled in you, that you can't be taught those things.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a really good, I guess we'll call it a tree. The Hetty tree here in Central Indiana is a really good one to fall out of for sure. I'll go back to something that you said when you and Hank were conversing. I like to do things that maybe people didn't think were possible. Okay. At Tech, to put you on the spot, what is possible?
Honestly, competing every night. We play a very hard schedule. For sure. I know when people look at us in the sectional, they kind of look at it as it's a pushover. It's a quick, easy game. Let's start preparing for the next team that we're going to play. I want to get to the point where we're competing with those schools in our sectional, and where kids are wanting to come to Arsenal Tech because of what we've built. I could easily do what some of the other coaches in the state are doing, where kind of this portal mentality inheriting kids. I'm more of a developmental coach. I like to develop kids that are in my feeder system, or, that have the moral values that I have in myself. And so I know that nowadays, especially with, in college sports, people are seeing a lot more movement and transferring. I would much rather have a kid develop in my program than just to come in. But I think with the times, you also have to adapt to that and be open to, having kids come into your program too.
Do you have to fight to keep your own kids too? Is there
Absolutely. I've been to so many middle school games over the last 3 or 4 years, and so many township coaches are at the games. And I think one of the big things in IPS is we have to provide them with the resources that the other township schools are giving. And so me being established as a coach, I tell a lot of kids, I'm not going anywhere. I want to build something here. And I think a lot of kids are starting to, think that it is possible to do here, but also some of these bigger programs, they're established. So if you go there, you might not play for 2 or 3 years. Whereas if you come into Arsenal Tech, you might have an opportunity to play at an earlier age, but also you're going to still get the development that happens, at the other township schools.
And you were the 6th different coach in 7 years. I'd forgotten that when you came in, I think, at Arsenal Tech. And I'd imagine too, like you said, that just that stability has to make a big difference too when you're telling these kids, here's why you should stay. This is an actual investment, and their parents too. I'm sure this is an actual investment in your kids. Like, I'm not gonna bolt and leave. We're here for the long haul.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I got a real good relationship with my principal, J.R. Shell. Just from our connections when I was coaching at Lawrence Central, I coached his daughter in middle school all the way up through high school. So it's just it's a foundation where I want to build something from the ground up. And I think, I'm here for a long haul. I want to build, a program that people don't think can be successful.
Mm-hmm. One of the other reasons that we had to have you on was Nike, and you posted a picture and some video too of just a shoe investment, a big investment in your program from Nike, which is obviously a massive deal for anybody and just a really cool thing that they're doing for you guys. Just tell Danny and I and everybody watching just the background and how all this came to be.
So through some connections that I've had with the Catching Stars Foundation with Tamika and Taj Catchings, I guess that they connected us. Also, Reggie Melson, who was a coach here, she connected us with Dick's Sporting Goods. Susan Myers reached out to me, invited us to a clinic where it was an all-girls basketball clinic. They had the opportunity to hear Cheryl Swoops talk, as well as Kelsey Mitchell. But more than anything, this was a kind of a upbuilding, energetic, kind of to build the morale of girls basketball. And they presented us with a check for $5,000. They told us that we can use the money in any way. So what I did was I decided to take it upon myself to invest in, shoes for the girls, because over the last couple years that I've had, I've coached here, we've had things that most high school athletes take for granted. Like most kids, they have a pair of tennis shoes, compression shorts, sports bra. Where here at Arsenal Tech, I was noticing that some of our student athletes, they didn't have those things that were needed to be able to develop as a basketball player. So what I did, talking to my coaching staff, I sat them down and I told them, I said, man, I want to make an investment into the girls. They told us we can spend this money on anything, but for sure, I want to start looking like a team. And I think that motivation, that confidence of looking good is eventually going to lead to playing better. It happens. It happens over a period of time, but I do think that the girls know that I care about them, or our program cares about them, and we want them to look good and be able to continue to develop on and off the court.
So did the girls help design those shoes? They look pretty slick, or did you surprise them? Was it an entire surprise to them?
No, I'll be honest with you. I'm a big Giannis Antetokounmpo fan. I think everybody was going with the Sabrinas. We work with BSN pretty tight. I reached out to our rep and I asked him, I said, what shoes can you get to us before Christmas? But I also wanted it to match with our uniforms. And like I said, I've had an opportunity to do some things with Nike before, and that's why I end up picking the Giannis's.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That's a really cool story. It's a really cool story, man.
That's phenomenal. There are good things happening at IPS, I tell you, and Michael's certainly one of them. That's great to hear. It was great catching up with you, Michael. I'll be seeing you here soon. I know with City coming up. I mean, before you know it, it's probably a couple weeks away now with Christmas right around the corner. So I'm sure we'll be running into you. But thank you so much for hopping on with us, and best of luck to you guys. We'll be talking again soon, man.
All right, man. I appreciate y'all having me again. Thanks.
Yep, happy holidays, Fox. Good to see you again.
Same to y'all.
That was Arsenal Tech coach Michael Fox joining us here on the Scores Table. Such a cool thing, man, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Especially if you, I mean, they're in their sectional, by the way, is Lawrence Central, Lawrence North, Warren Central, North Central, I think, and then Tech is maybe the 5th team. Okay, like those are major state powers in the city. Okay, now it's very different on the it's the same sectional, I would assume, on the boys' side. I mean, and Tech has been the alpha in that sectional many times on the boys' side, but you see and not even a Lawrence Central, but you see a Lawrence North Tech kind of matchup. I mean, naturally in girls basketball, people are going to make an opinion of what they think is going to happen in that game. But if you go and look at the records of all of those schools, Tech doesn't have the worst one in that sectional. I mean, what Fox has done in a few years, I mean, he talked about how we're getting wins off the court. I mean, look, when you do things like that and you create culture and you create excitement and visibility around your program, the wins follow. I mean, culture-based things. I mean, and I say this from experience. Culture is extremely important. And the one thing that I can say about Tech, look, they're not going to win sectional this year. Okay. I just, Coach Fox knows that. Okay. So what he's doing is absolutely correct. Let's focus on the wins off the floor. Let's build a culture. I'm in this for the long haul, he said. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, graduation comes up quick on some schools. And who knows how the cycle that is. I mean, there was a joke in one of my text threads. Brownsburg was up 47-10 on Bedford North Lawrence at the half. Okay. Well, what a difference a year makes. Like that's a score that cyclically shouldn't be, well, last year the score is this, and then this year the score is this. That's how quickly things can change with graduation in an area. So I commend Coach Fox. I commend the people involved in that Tech program. He mentioned J.R. Schelt, really good friend of mine. But that's something to keep an eye on because with the right leadership, building the right culture, the wins are going to come.
And they have come too. To be clear, his first season they won 8 games.
That's right.
That was more than the past 2 seasons combined. Double their total from the year before. They won 7 games last year. Kayla Lacombe, by the way, was just so much fun to watch. Yeah, I got to see her a few times, and the kid just can shoot the lights out from anywhere. She was great to watch. And really special. But like he said, I mean, he's invested. And I spent some time with the Tech boys soccer program for a future that hasn't quite come together yet, but same kind of energy where they have had some success on the boys soccer side. They won a city championship. They're contenders in that area, and it can be done. And I love too that Michael does that he has success for Kayla to point to, and for him too, just the energy that he brings of like, I want to prove people wrong and that kind of thing. And just that mentality in general. I love that, especially in a situation, at IPS, like you mentioned, where those kids don't have a lot of things that other people, other kids, other situations might take for granted. So I love that. And I know Sable, if he hadn't abandoned us, he would be very fired up and ready to go on the feeder program thing too, because ask anybody but him especially. I mean, that's critical to building a program.
Well, I mean, you asked that question about, you recruiting your own kids and things like that. I mean, that's not, it used to be, oh, well, it's just an AAU thing, or now it's just a private school thing. I mean, now it's a public school thing. I mean, you have to recruit your own kids, and you don't have to do it just from middle school to high school. I mean, now you have to do it within a 4-year high school career. I mean, and you're talking about major kids that have taught. I mean, and we don't need to go down and create a list. I mean, everybody knows that there's great players that are transferring. But the fact that he said, I've been to more middle school games, and I can't remember what the predicate of that sentence was, but that's what it takes, is to be out there, be visible, talk to people, create some excitement, be relevant, things like that. And so they're putting the work in. And, I know Michael, he's not going to take any shortcuts about it. That's for sure.
I love it. You pick a school, Danny. You want Eastern Hancock, Warren Central, Lawrence Central.
Well, what else were you at? Yeah, Eastern.
I was just going to play one of those. Give us a chance to breathe a little bit. I'll play the interview yesterday with Kenzie Koch to give us a chance to breathe, and then we can bounce over, maybe talk a little bit of Center Grove.
Yeah. Hey, man, I'll talk whatever. I saw 15 basketball games on stream this weekend. Just say it and we'll talk about it.
Let's do that. We're going to give us a chance to breathe, collect our thoughts a little bit. So we're going to pull up that video file right now and let you hear from Kenzie Koch, who went for 35 points yesterday and a 62-49 win over Cathedral.
I think overall we played a lot as a team and kind of showed everyone like what we can do. We did lose a lot. We lost 5 seniors from last year, and I think a lot of people thought that we weren't going to be anywhere as good as we were last year, but I think throughout this game and then North Decatur that we're still just as good, and we're going to prove a lot of people wrong this year.
Coach talked about how quickly this group has gelled, and it's kind of even surprised her. Has it surprised you how well everything's worked?
Not really. I played with some of these girls last year, but not as much as the seniors played with me. But I feel like we've accepted our roles as a team, but not in a bad way, just using our strengths to play against these really good teams. I think we meshed together a lot better than we thought we were, but I think we're doing really good right now.
Was there a bit of added emphasis on this little 3-game stretch where you go North Decatur here, then Lapel?
Yeah, it kind of got us not a little nervous, but we were like, all right, we got a lot to work for, we got a lot to do, a big checklist to do, but I think we're having a lot more fun with it because our MEC, our conference, we don't get challenged a whole lot. I mean, there's still good games, but I mean, beating Cathedral and North Decatur, and then we play Lapel next. I mean, those are the kind of games that we're most excited for, and it's exciting because I think a lot of people want to watch us, and that's what it's all about. I mean, we're just making it fun for everyone, and we're just having fun as well.
All right, that was Eastern Hancock sophomore Kenzie Koch, 35 points yesterday. Bella Sotelo added 10. Danny's going to get a chance to see her against Lapel on Tuesday.
Yep, I'll be there live.
Very excited for you to see that. Because I mean, we were texting. It's been a year since I'd seen her, so it's probably a little bit more pronounced of a jump. But man, she's something else.
She's good, isn't she?
Her coach. I'm going to have a story on it later this week, so I'll spoil a little bit of it here. But her coach was talking about how she wishes she could watch the game from up behind the basket just to see how this kid passes and makes how she sees the floor a little bit better. Because watching her on the sideline, she sees Kenzie throw the ball, and it's just like, what are you doing? And then it's like, oh, that's what she's doing as the ball's going through the hoop for one of her teammates. She's mastered the one-arm pass. Her shot selection this year, she took a lot of shots, don't get me wrong, but her selection they were pretty smart shots for the most part, which is a huge difference. And she isn't, I think you said this, so I'll steal your phrase, but she's not playing like a freshman anymore. And she's not really even playing like a sophomore. It kind of feels like she's playing more like a junior or senior with some of the decisions that she makes. Sure, there's some mistakes, but whatever that happens. Eastern Hancock as a team, and this is two data that you'll see is they got some talent. Like they graduated a lot last year, like a lot. But the pieces they have coming back are fitting together really well. Like Kenzie mentioned, people are fitting into their roles. They have kids who can knock down shots. I was curious to see how much of it would be her forcing things, trying to make things happen on her own, but she did not hesitate to pass the ball. Her teammates know where to be, which speaks to that chemistry component. They know where to be with her and to always be ready on the ball. Ready for the ball. There's not a lot of standing around and watching and gazing at her make plays. So it's a really impressive team. Like another thing she mentioned, the schedule isn't the toughest, but this was a telling stretch for them where they go North Decatur, they beat them. They go out to Cathedral, 3A school, they beat them. And now they have Lapel with Lanaya Wills coming up here on Tuesday. So an important 3-game stretch, but early returns have been very, very impressive, and Saturday's performance against Cathedral was quite informative.
And I'm sure Lanaya will guard Kenzie too.
Oh,
it's just worth the price of admission just to see that for a quarter.
Oh, it's been
you mentioned the teammates. There's kids that we didn't really know last year because of the graduation of God, I got myself dead. Ruby White was one. Sammy Boulding was another. Brooklyn Willis, I think they had Mackenzie O'Neill. Like they graduated all of those kids. Okay, Kenzie Cook's assists from last year to this year have gone up by
That's
one.
unbelievable.
Okay? That's an unbelievable, staggering thing. Okay, so the question that you always ask when you have a talent that's extraordinary like Kenzie Cook's is, what kind of increased production do you get from your teammates? Okay. Now, we mentioned Riley Huotari's 7 assists. Okay. Like she's dealing to Lily Graves and dealing to Ashley Baker and dealing to DuVall. Okay. All due respect to the roster, I mean, you just don't know who the Eastern Hancock people are yet, but to go up in assists speaks largely to the Kenzie Koch effect. Okay. I'll center this conversation around one kid. Bella Sotelo's real. Okay. He's a real basketball player. Okay. Yes, she's a track athlete. Yes, she has one of the fastest times within her class in her respective event. It's not the first time that we've mentioned her name on this podcast. Okay. But she made plays yesterday. I mean, I think she had 18 points, but they're mixing up D's. But if you get Sotelo out in the open floor, no one's catching her. And that's a nice little maybe Robin to Kenzie's Batman. But she has really stepped up. And I would go as far as to say, if you look at the individual improvement from last year to this year, Kenzie Koch didn't improve even the most on her own basketball team. Bella Sotelo did. She got really good. And so they're a threat. I remember, with the Ruby White and Sammy Bolding and Mackenzie O'Neal, Brooklyn Willis, Kenzie Koch kind of starting five that they rolled out last year, that was a state championship contender, and that we would see what would happen when they graduated that senior class. They are right there. They are going to be competitive. Now, the 2A, right, Hank?
Yep.
As I was watching the Cathedral game, all I could think about was how do they match up against South Knox? And that's unfair to South Knox. It's also unfair to Eastern Hancock. But they're going to have, South Knox is going to have to deal with Eastern Hancock, I would assume, at some point in time through that, because what Kenzie's done has been great. So what did you see when you saw Sotelo?
Really impressive. I mean, she was, like you said, she pops out there. She's able to make some plays, create on her own. And I want to say she was on the receiving end of a lot of those just rifle passes across the lane where Cook finds just the tiniest little window and throws it through there, threads the needle through and finds Sotelo, and she's able to convert. And that's the thing. She's getting in the shots, and she's converting them at a higher rate, which counts for a lot, especially at the 2A level. The one thing with Eastern Hancock, and it goes both ways. Their defense was creating a lot of turnovers, but they also had a lot of problems with the Irish's press, where they were kind of speeding them up and forcing them into some bad passes and turnovers, which allowed that game to be closer than it probably could have been early on. And that's also a big credit to the Irish, obviously. But overall, though, a lot further along than what I expect them to be.
I think the word that jumps out to me when watching Kenzie Koch, because I too, this will be the first time that I've seen her live in a few months. You can even almost tell from the interview, she's just more refined and more mature as a person. And I think that's translated into her game. So if you look at the third quarter, it's 33-32. There's a left wing ball screen that comes for Kenzie Koch, and she's holding the basketball. Okay. She doesn't like how Cathedral was aligned. They were kind of showing the hedge early and then kind of pushing her into the screen. Kenzie Koch holds the ball. She waves the screen away, passes the basketball, and then relocates to another spot where she ends up getting another basket. Now, I can't remember the exact context. If it was 33-32 Cathedral at that time, that basket was the basket that Eastern Hancock needed to keep the lead for the last time in that game. That's refinement. Later in the quarter, she goes on to have a 10-0 run by herself. By the way, with an and one, a made three, a runner, and a contested extended layup on the right. Her complete bag is under control. Again, that's refinement. You noticed also, she was drawing fouls in the full court under full face guard. Okay. That's refinement. It's just understanding, hey, it's going to be really hard to score against this face guard. So let me see if I can get 2 freebies. I think she was probably perfect from the line. I can't remember watching that game being like, oh, she missed a foul shot. So she's probably, I'm guessing here 10 for 10 from the line. Hank, you'll fact check me on that. But again, that's refinement. So we're seeing some refinement with Kenzie Koch in her game, that she's starting to make very intelligent game flow decisions. By the way, the reason why that 10-0 run wasn't a 12-0 run is because when Lisa Finn started moving her team more to a face guard of Kenzie Koch, there was a possession after the 10-0 run where Kenzie Koch barely crossed half court, and she just let her teammates play 4-on-4, and they got a bucket, by the way.
That's smart.
that's refinement. So, good for her. I'm really excited to see her and Wills. Those are two extraordinarily talented kids. I can't wait to see them on Tuesday and what I assume is going to be a really cool environment in Eastern Hancock.
Judd had 9 points in addition to 10 from Sotelo yesterday, too. That's worth noting. 13 for 14 at the line for Kenzie Koch.
Oh, she did miss one. Okay.
Yeah, she missed one, but she also had this sequence, and I think this is one you're referencing where she gets the and one. All right, it's a close game. It's a 3-point play. She hits a 3-point play that makes it 36-32. She follows it up with a 2, a 3, and a 2. 10 straight points for Eastern Hancock, and they're off and running up 43-34. Wow. Cathedral on the other side, I kind of want to wait until I get to see them a second time. They were not at full strength yesterday. Jada Wilson did not play. But even so, they hung with a good team there at the start of the game, and they kept fighting there at the end. It's a young team. They're finding their way still a little bit, working through some kinks and things like that. But they'll be okay. They'll be competitive within the city tournament, and I think too their sectional set up for them that they'll be able to make some racket and challenge a team like a Bishop Chatard, which is obviously the favorite going in, but we'll be able to rabble-rouse with them a little bit.
Go ahead.
Center Grove had themselves a week. You start on Tuesday where they close on a 17-3 run with a 7-0 run by Grayson Gillard built into there. She gets over to 1,000 points for her career, en route to a 58-48 win over Plainfield. Ava Grant had a big shot late to lead out to 5. And then on the other side, Hannah Menser goes and hits 3 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, I think as part of a 21-point effort. A couple nights later, Center Grove was without Gilliard, and they lose to Bloomington South 45-30. They're knocked from the ranks of the unbeatens at that point. I don't know. What do you make of their week?
I got a ton of text messages after Bloomington South beat Center Grove. Okay. And they were all over the board. Some of them wanted to know the validity of Bloomington South. Some of them wanted to hear about Center Grove. But here's what we know. And now we have, game evidence to support this statement. Gilliard changed them, like completely changed, like a 7-0 run against Plainfield in the fourth quarter of that game with really smart basketball players and like Menser and Williams and what I have called one of the better staffs in that area with Benj, Block, and Menser. For her to be able to do that, that's special kind of territory. And we saw just kind of a graphical fallout when they played Bloomington South later. So I think we have to asterisk that game. But the other thing that it tells me is I think Center Grove is extremely relevant. And this is not a hot take. This is not the first time I've even said this. They're really, really going to be very good come tournament time because they just impart their system and their pace and their culture into every basketball game. Now, that sounds like such a dumb talking head cliche. Okay.
Listen, that's what I make my bread and butter on. It's great.
But they're practicing at that pace every practice, and they're playing at that pace every game. Many of the teams that they will see en route to a potential state championship run for them don't play that way. So now you're out of character in every basketball game. So Kevin has a built-in advantage. But let me spin through another kind of avenue here. If a game does get to, we'll call it off book or off Kevin's script, okay? You now have a kid that can make plays. There was a play. So they run the swing offense. Okay. I think everybody knows that. There was a play where, and this was a long time ago. I have no idea actually who they were playing. This is like 2 or 3 weeks ago where, Gilliard was catching the ball on ball reversal in their swing. She was ripping baseline and she was attacking. So she got a couple of buckets, but then she tried to do it a third time, ends up taking a horrible shot. Kevin snapped. You can see it on film. Kevin snaps around to his bench to presumably yell at his assistant coaches about the shot that Gilliard just took. And while he was turned around, venting his frustration about what Gilliard had done, she was stealing the defensive rebound and laying it in. Before he turns around, she had completely erased all of the frustration that Kevin, he didn't erase it. He's a coach, so he's going to be completely frustrated and find the teaching opportunity in it. But now you have a kid like that can make, off-schedule plays. And now you couple that with who I think is one of the highest IQ basketball players that we have in the state, regardless of class, and Lily Bischoff. They're tough, man. They are really tough, and it's hard to have that narrative after a Bloomington South loss. And then one last thing on Bloomington South, I think, is real. I think we have to asterisk that Center Grove game, but Lashy and Hall and these kids they're a really good team. I was getting texts about the excitement for that basketball game. I didn't end up going to. I was planning on going to it. I didn't end up going to it because I knew Gilliard was going to be out. So it's probably going to be better to see those two teams, maybe at different points in the season. But Bloomington South, they seem real, don't they, Hank?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, they held Center Grove to 33% shooting. And I mean, Center Grove has, you mentioned, I think I view Gilliard is kind of like just that missing piece, but I mean, like you said, Lily Bischoff's still really talented. Emerson Volcan's been on a bit of a heater. She finished with 10 points. She had a big game against Plainfield too. Ava Grant, who came on strong last year, is having a really strong season. So they have some pieces around there. In Bloomington South, they bottled them up and they won a game. They won that game and they won it decisively too. Like, this wasn't a close game. I think if it was a closer game, I think I'd lean more to, who knows what happens or whatever. But no, I mean, I'm impressed with Bloomington South, because even without Gilliard, I was kind of thinking, oh, well, Center Grove will squeak out a win that'll be closer than people expected, but they'll do that because it's just what Center Grove does. But Bloomington South threw a wrench in that, and credit to them. I think they're absolutely a factor in there. And you look at their schedule. I mean, they went to overtime with Evansville North, who we talked about last week, and they have some other big challenges, coming up here with the rivalry game at Bloomington North, and then you got Mooresville down the line. They're always just a tricky team, and then Evansville Central in January. So we'll get a chance to see what they're made of, and then Avon to close out the year. So we'll get a chance too to see Bloomington South against some other different styles of play and see how they match up. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you can take anything away from a team that's 10-1 and has beaten teams that have been put in front of it pretty handily, because the great ones, they beat the snot out of teams when they need to. Emerson Volcan, by the way, 10 points against Plainfield, 10 points against Bloomington South, 10 points also against Plainfield with 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals for Lily Bischoff. And then Ava Grant had the 13 points as well. So hopefully Gilliard is back soon for Center Grove. We'll see how they bounce back here over the upcoming week. On the other side, Plainfield, I just want to mention they're having a bit of a difficult stretch here where they've lost 3 of 4, but they've all come against really good teams. They lost to Avon December 3rd, then the Center Grove game Tuesday, then Saturday they lose to Noblesville by 10. Just a really tough stretch. I don't think you take too much away from that. Maybe just, sometimes you lose to good teams, but I think they're going to bounce back and they'll have a chance to remedy that with some signature wins with the county tournament coming up, plus a team like HSE, Evansville Memorial, and some opportunities here coming down the pike for Plainfield.
Yep.
Another game, Danny, that we want to talk about. Columbia City had themselves a week. They sweep the Homestead Norwell for the first time in ages. First win over Homestead since January 16th of 2010, man. 32 points for Addie Baxter, plus 12 rebounds, 11 assists, 6 steals. And Anissa Tonka was huge. That duo then stepped up again Friday night against Norwell on a 74-67 win. Career high for Tonka with 25 points. And I think Addie had a triple-double again, at least. I'll look that up while you tell us about what you saw from that game.
She had a triple-double in the Norwell game. In the Homestead game.
Oh, okay. I got it mixed up.
Yeah. So in the Homestead game, so they
13 and 11 against Homestead. That was my fault.
But they, from a game plan perspective, I mean, 13 and 11 is like getting 33 and 15. I mean, they decided to take the air out of the bowl. That's a very difficult game plan to execute. We saw Lawrence North try it against Lawrence Central and did a very good job and kept them in it. But here's the one thing that you have to have if you're going to melt the clock and limit possessions. You have to have the lead. And this goes hand in hand with the narrative that we've had on Columbia City all season, is they haven't had the lead. They've gotten into foul trouble and dropped down to Fishers. They have dropped down to teams and found themselves in positions where they had to make comebacks and fight back. And you're exerting so much energy and you're out of the scheme. Against Homestead, I think they led wire to wire. I think. I don't know. I guess I can't recall the first 3 or 4 minutes of that game, but I think they led wire to wire. And the one take home from the week is if you saw what they did against Norwell with Baxter getting into the 30s and having a triple-double, they wanted possessions in that basketball game because they got rhythm. They felt like they were probably more talented. They wanted to limit possessions, but now you have within one singular week 2 very different game plans, but the difference is they got off to better starts. Mm-hmm. So here we are now with Columbia City making the next turn into the next chapter of their season, which is, I think they're ready to be considered a competitor to come out of the North in Class 3A because you have Addie Baxter, and now you're starting to get production from different players. There's one kid I want to shout out, and I'm looking for her name, Leah Hertel. Okay, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Okay, but Homestead, being who they are and who their coach is and who their players are, they were making a run. It wasn't like it was easy for Columbia City to lead wire to wire against Homestead. They had a possession down 2, I think a couple of possessions down 2. And one of them, there was a Helsum to Knoll handoff that Leah Hertel jumps and takes it the length and finishes the layup to limit the opportunity for Homestead to get a field goal attempt to tie or to take the lead. It vaults to 4, and Columbia City never has to defend Homestead again, down 1 possession with the chance to tie or take the lead. It was such a big play. But now you're talking about Anissa Tonkel's season high, where I'm talking about Leah Hertel making a play. I'm talking about Amy's rhythm now and getting her kids to start fast. This is a team who's starting to find themselves on an upward trajectory. So a very nice win for them. And then you had already put that in historical reference.
A long time.
It's been a minute.
A lot of sectional losses in there too.
It's been a minute.
Hey, and you know what was coming up next? Columbia City and Warsaw on Tuesday. How good is that game going to be?
Warsaw's a wagon. They are an absolute wagon. Did anybody see the Warsaw Fort Wayne Carroll? And I'm asking the audience rhetorically, okay?
Courtney.
I mean, I'm going to talk about them more in depth after I see them live, okay? But let me tease a couple of thoughts here, okay? Yes, Zartman is a great shooter. Yes, Winchester's amazing because she's an Indiana Junior All-Star. Yes, Jocelyn Bricker's probably playing the position as good as anybody. But Fort Wayne Carroll comes down in that game in triangle and 2. Okay, so they take Zartman and Bricker away, and Zartman and Bricker just went to the corners. And Krebs didn't do anything drastically different in that Fort Wayne Carroll game. He put in Abby Peterson, who I think has played limited minutes. I've seen, more than a couple of Warsaw games this year. And Abby Peterson is, she's a kid who was on the second page of the scouting report, who has now vaulted to maybe even the first page of the scouting report. This kid comes in against triangle and 2 and hits 4 threes. I think it's 4 threes. So naturally, I went to kind of look to see what she was doing. Oh, well, she's like, I think it's like 14 of 21 from 3 this year or something like that. Like, she's like the second or third kid off the bench, and Lenny Krebs in triangle and 2 there was no panic there. He just put another kid in, and the kid made plays. And in that basketball game, I'll punctuate my thought with this because I got a lot from a scheme perspective that I want to talk about with Warsaw. But then they went man, and then Bricker immediately gets an and 1, and they were attacking him off the bounce. But, Chastain, I think 16 of 20 from the field. Now she plays what, they run a lot of dribble drive. She plays in what they call the dunker spot. So she's getting layups, but that's a wagon. Okay. And in that game against Fort Wayne Carroll, I think they broke the school record for most 3-pointers made in a game. I think they had 16. They had 8 of them, by the way, in the first quarter. If my recollection serves me correct, I think it was Neely had 2, and then Zartman had 1. And then Peterson had 4, and then I think Winchester had 1, and then I think it was punctuated with maybe another one by Neely, but 8 of them in the first quarter. And before they got a 2-point basket, which was Bricker's 2-point basket, her first basket of the game, they were already up 24-10 in that game, and Fort Wayne Carroll was on their third defense. And just when you think, okay, well, who's Fort Wayne Carroll? Well, Fort Wayne Carroll has wins against teams like Fishers this year. Like, they're good. And they clocked them. Warsaw clocked them. That's an absolute wagon.
I also 100% did not realize that game was just earlier this week. Like, it feels like it happened a couple weeks ago. I was just this week. This week has just been chaos, just unbelievable chaos. Like, I'll go on a tangent, but the Center Grove thing, LCLN went down to the wire. Fishers Knowles was going down to the wire, and the Lanesville Borden debacle is happening all within like a 20 to 30 minute span. I think LCLN was definitely happening almost simultaneously with the Borden Lanesville debacle. I mean, it was just such a crazy night as part of a crazy week. And man, we're barely halfway through the season. Like, imagine what it's going to look like here in February. A few things that I wanted to touch on, and we can pause and dive in deeper. Congrats to Brad Bozeman of Twin Lakes. He got his 300th career win with a 48-46 triumph over Western. It's been a tougher year for Twin Lakes, which lost Addie Bozeman to injury at the beginning of the year. So they've been without their star player. But, picked up their third win of the season and got a milestone for their head coach. Another coach who picked up a couple wins, Aaron Trimpe over at Hamilton Heights. They've won back-to-back games now, beating Logansport and West Lafayette. It's great to see that. Aaron's great people. Carmel improved to 5-5 with that overtime win over Fort Wayne Snyder. Shelbyville got a big conference win over New Palestine. And then how about Tri-West? Lauren Bear over at Tri-West hit 8 3-pointers, a school record, and scored 42 in a 78-44 win over North Montgomery, which is always impressive. And then the last game that I wanted to at least touch on, Noblesville Fishers, Noblesville 52-51. About what you expect when those two teams get together, just pure unfiltered chaos. It was 21-9 and then 31-17 late in the second for Noblesville. Fishers comes back to tie at 39, and they led by 2 with under a minute left. Looked like maybe overtime, maybe something weird happens. Well, Tipner happened. Meredith Tipner scores with 9.7 seconds left to get a finish with 32 points and lift her team to a 1-point win. And then I will wrap up my thoughts on that little whip around, Danny, with just how good has this Miss Basketball race been, even just within the Indy area. Like, just isolating it to maybe the 4 most notable kids in Indy area: Maya Makaluski at HSE, Jayla Lampley at Lawrence Central, the aforementioned Meredith Tipner at Noblesville, and then even Avery Gordon down at Brownsburg. All 4 are putting up crazy numbers. All 4 have their teams on a roll. I think you could argue Tipner's doing the most with the least, just in terms of supporting cast. They're a really young team. But, I mean, all of them are just going off night after night after night. And even when they have an off night, they're still putting up tremendous numbers, and their teams are still winning. So, and there's more candidates outside the Indy area too. So this Miss Basketball race is just exceptional entertainment.
You can't even like the Heisman committee for college football, like they just bring like their 4 finalists. I think you would have a ton of argument as to who the 4 finalists should even be. But what's unique about this race is it brings in all of the things that we love to talk about with Miss Basketball. Okay. Is it a career award? Is it the best season? Does it go to the best player? How much does team success and postseason success relay into it? It's going to come down to a lot of the personal preference things there. But yeah, you're right. It is shaping up to be a good race. Outside of Indianapolis, you mentioned that there's some candidates there. You have to look at South Bend, Washington's Kira Reynolds. You have to look at Columbia City's Addison Baxter. You have to look at kids like that. And now when you get outside of Indianapolis, now you have a muddled mess. So I can't wait to hear your story there. So, and so you did your whip around. I'll do mine. I saw Warsaw over Carroll. There will be more thoughts on Warsaw. We already talked about Columbia City. McCutcheon got their 10th win. So they come out and lose by 10-ish in Plainfield in their first game, and don't have the greatest offensive output. And here they are winning 10 straight, albeit, maybe not the most resistance from their schedule. But you have to beat the teams that are in front of you, and they have. Carmel over Snyder, you mentioned, Carmel, it's a nice bounce back win after getting beat by Westfield. I saw that game. We had mentioned, by the way, Westfield likes to guard people and they're going to be in every game. Boy, that really came to that. I have a lot of evidence to support that statement now, because not only did Westfield guard Carmel and make it very difficult on Carmel in their building, But then they do the same thing to Zionsville. And so their commitment to the defensive end, I think, is really extraordinary. Compliments to Kelsey Key and getting them to play that side of the floor. Eastern Hancock over Cathedral. Homestead bounced back just fine, by the way. They're going to be just fine. Bishop Dwenger. I do want to point out, by the way, that loss by Homestead also deserves maybe not a big, bold, italicized asterisk, but they are without Carly Mollering. And she had a
wrist brace?
like a wrist brace. So I don't know if that's a distal radius fracture. I don't know if that's a soft tissue injury. I have heard from some people up in the Homestead community that she's going to be back, but that's something that Carly Mollering was playing really well. But now you have Parker, who's been able to inject some other kids into high major roles, into really important roles within that basketball team. One being Delaney Knoll, the freshman. There's Scarberry, McLaughlin, Fry. Kids like that are having to do a little bit more outside of the normal Epps and Helsum and Ankenbrook, kind of class there. So when they get Mollering back, it'll be interesting because that's a really deadly bullet that they're going to add to their ammunition there, to be even a tougher out. So I don't know if Mollering's going to be back for the Hall of Fame. If the distal radius fracture, she won't be. But that'll be interesting to see. And then I think the last game that I had was Mount Vernon, Yorktown. Oh, Floyd Central, Silver Creek. Okay,
yeah, we wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, so Floyd Central beats Silver Creek. Okay,
Floyd Central 9-0 on the year, by the way.
You can't. Yes, I just can't really say that. Okay,
yeah.
So Coach is in his first year. Hank will get the coach's name.
Jerry Hickey, 9-0 in his first year, 12th season overall, though.
Yes. Okay. So, but Jerry Hickey comes in and he's probably already exceeded the win, or close to exceeding the win total they've had the 2 previous years with very similar rosters, because the feature of Floyd Central, Elise Coleman, college basketball player, but Brinley Clark I found impressive. Now you can't find a lot of their stuff on Max Preps. You even can't. I mean, a lot of their stuff is like password protected, even on stream. So I wasn't able to find the Silver Creek Floyd game, but I was able to watch Floyd. Oh my gosh, who did they play? Fishers, maybe in the Evansville North Classic. I got to see them, and I was really kind of watching Fishers. But
I think so. We were texting about that, maybe.
Yeah, but Floyd's real, okay. And if you look at who is in their section, they are hands down right now the odds-on favorite to win that sectional. So the likelihood that we're going to see Floyd Central and Jerry Hickey's outfit against a really good opponent in a 1-game standalone regional Saturday game are pretty high. And what Jerry has shown is he's taken a similar basketball team that they had last year. He's given more opportunity for Elise Coleman and Brinley Clark to make plays. That's a very good junior backcourt. And he's going to have the same backcourt next year because those kids are going to return as seniors. So I think we're on the front end of what could be a nice little run for Floyd. And those people down south, I mean, it's validated by the Silver Creek win, and everybody that listens to this pod knows how we feel about Silver Creek. But what a nice win that might fly a little bit under the radar.
The Highlanders, by the way, you can kind of see this coming just based off the win totals where they go 5, 7, 9, 10, 13, and now 9-0, like you mentioned, to the first leg of the season, and they got some games coming up. Seymour, Andre, and Northridge, Rushville to close out the calendar year. They get the Borden Lanesville back-to-back trip in January. That'll be interesting, playing a contrasting style, and then close out the year at Austin. Our second last game is at Austin. Austin's 9-1 in 2A. I'm not entirely sure always on strength of schedule, but they've been on a very strong start, and they're always kind of a power there out of the South.
Yeah.
Yeah. One game that I want to deliver on the tease about, that was Ben Davis, and 2, I spent some time with Warren Central. Just 2 teams who are definitely rebuilding, but for Ben Davis, what they did to Roncalli, they were down by, I think, 18 at one point. They come back. They were down 26-8 at one point, found back and found a way to win. A lot of their press and pressure just kind of got Roncalli out of sorts, and eventually it sounds like, just talking to people who were at the game, started to wear them down a little bit, got Roncalli worn down, and it's really fun and informative talking to Sam Benj about how he coaches such a young team after having so many veteran teams. Just how do you handle this year with so many fresh faces and everything. And it's just fun listening and talking to him about how he builds up that confidence in kids. And he's closing in on 700 wins too, Danny. It sounds like he's going to get to that at the Richmond tournament here in a couple weeks. And just awesome. But, just focusing on the positives with them, getting the kids built up, and we'll see where they go in a couple years.
Nice win for Stan Benj. He's on Mount Rushmore of one of the best active coaches in Indiana high school basketball. He's probably in the George Washington spot. So we'll track that. He's assaulting the records books from a win perspective. But the Roncalli win also, he's a coach at Roncalli.
Yeah.
I mean, Stan Benj was the head coach at Roncalli in the class of 2016, who had a McDonald's All-American by the name of Lindsay Corsaro. She was committed to Kentucky, decommitted from Kentucky, ended up at UCLA and being a 3-year starter for Corey Close out at UCLA. But that was him. So he went from, the Ben Davis dynasty that he had resurfaces at Roncalli, where he has none other than a McDonald's All-American. And Lindsay Corsaro would have won. She was in a class with Ty Harris and Jackie Young. Okay. So that, I was going to say, it's probably one of the better high school classes that we've ever seen at the top. But nice win against his former team for Stan Benj. He just continues to do it.
And those Roncalli Ben Davis games, they never disappoint. I mean,
Never.
I think it's been buzzer beaters, wild comebacks. I want to say Ben Davis did something similar to them last year too, in the tournament, no less. So they never disappoint. And how about this starting four for Ben Davis in terms of their schedule? They came out of the gates with Fishers, HSE, Brownsburg, and Plainfield. That would suck with a loaded, experienced senior team, let alone one that's trying to fit in a bunch of new pieces and figure everything out. But they weathered the storm, and now it's about building confidence. They've won 4 of 7 now after their county loss to Franklin Central yesterday. They got Zionsville, and then, like I said, go down to Richmond for a tournament to close out the year.
Yep.
Anything else, Danny, that we need to touch on or get to game-wise? Or are we ready to wrap this thing up?
No, I think we can wrap it up. But the holidays, we'll do our pre-holiday kind of tease. But it probably reached me a little bit early. I don't know why. I just turned games on. I couldn't get enough of it. So I'm excited for this holiday season.
It's going to be a lot of fun. There are a lot of good games. I'm starting to sort through that. We'll probably have one more pod before we shut it down for the Christmas break, but a lot to get to. On Indy Star, we'll have some features. I'm thinking this week it's all subject to change, but something on Borden Juniors, Avery Wheeler, Riley Rarick this week. Eastern Hancock and sophomore Kenzie Koch on Wednesday, and then Thursday, something on Hadley Crozier, who's back and playing full-time for the Eagles after tearing her ACL last year in the Class A state championship. And then also, for those still listening, we'll tie a bow, hopefully, on the Borden Lanesville controversy. I've been in contact with the coaches involved as well as the IHSAA. So any updates, we'll pass those along on just a really weird and wild situation, I guess. But for Danny Rego, we thank Coach Michael Fox from Arsenal Tech for joining us. I'm Brian Henson. We'll be back with the full crew next time we talk to you.